Africa has, to some, a reputation as a dangerous place. Ethiopia gets similarly tarnished. Selective media reporting and historical legacies result in irrational decision-making when it comes to choosing where to go on holiday. These are misplaced. Millions of people each year have safe, memorable and wonderful trips to Africa. A vanishingly small number of trips ever see any problems, and any problems that do arise can often be easily avoided. Ethiopia's location gives it strategic dominance. As a jumping-off point in the Horn of Africa, close to the Middle East and its markets, Ethiopia is landlocked, bordering Eritrea, Somalia, Kenya, South Sudan, and has been using neighboring Djibouti's main port for the last 2 decades. However, with the recent peace agreement with Eritrea, Ethiopia is set to resume accessing the Eritrean ports of Assab and Massawa for its international trade. Ethiopia is a country located in the Horn of Africa, formerly known as Abyssinia. It shares borders with Eritrea to the north and northeast, Djibouti and Somalia to the east, Sudan and South Sudan to the west, and Kenya to the south. Some of the oldest evidence for anatomically modern humans has been found in Ethiopia, widely considered the region from which modern humans first set out for the Middle East and places beyond, tracing its roots to the 2nd millennium BC. Ethiopia was a monarchy for most of its history. During the 1st centuries AD, the Kingdom of Aksum maintained a unified civilization in the region, followed by the Ethiopian Empire circa 1137. Ethiopia was reunified in 1855 under Tewodros II. Beginning its modern history, the country slowly modernized under the leadership of Johannes IV and defended itself from an Egyptian invasion in 1874. Emperor Johannes fought and won wars against Egyptians, Italians, and Mahdists to keep his people free from foreign invaders. He was killed in action in 1889. Under Menelik II, Ethiopia defeated an Italian invasion in 1896 and came to be recognized as a legitimate state by European powers. More rapid modernization took place under Menelik II and Haile Selassie, but this did not deter another Italian invasion in 1935. The Italian army occupied parts of the country from October 1935 to May 1940. A joint force of British and Ethiopian rebels drove the Italians out of the country in 1941, and Haile Selassie was returned to the throne. Ethiopia derived prestige from its uniquely successful military resistance during the late 19th century scramble for Africa, becoming the only African country to defeat a European colonial power and retain its sovereignty. Subsequently, many African nations adopted the colors of Ethiopia's flag following their independence. It was the first independent African member of the 20th Century League of Nations and the United Nations. Ethiopia is not usually the first place people consider for vacations, but it should be. Ethiopia rewards visitors with stunning scenery, great food, world-renowned coffee, fascinating history and much more. Such as the most interesting facts about Ethiopia is that it has an enormous religious value, being the 2nd oldest official Christian nation in the world after Armenia and the place for the first Hijra, 615 AD. In Islamic history, it is also the oldest independent country in Africa. Ethiopia achieved international prestige with its uniquely successful military resistance during the late 19th century scramble for Africa, becoming the only African country to defeat a European colonial power and retain its sovereignty. Apart from this religious heritage, Ethiopia has a long history and has persisted through many difficult times that left this country with a bunch of historic sites, among which are the towns of Aksum, Gondar, Harar, and the rock churches of Lalibela and Geralta. Overall, you can count on many attractions and a plethora of activities you can enjoy, like rafting and exploring the country's mountains, lakes, waterfalls, deserts, etc. Ethiopia bonus facts often include its incredibly diverse landscape, history, and culture. Additionally, there is so much to see, and you may need a second visit to explore the intricacies and beauties that make up Ethiopia. Wild Frontiers offers a selection of Ethiopian tours and explorations of this eclectic With more than 112 million people, 2019, Ethiopia is the second most populous nation in Africa after Nigeria and the fastest growing economy in the region. However, it is also one of the poorest, with a per capita income of $850. Ethiopia aims to reach lower middle-income status by 2025. Ethiopia's economy experienced strong, broad-based growth averaging 9.4% a year from 2010-11 to 2019-20. Ethiopia's real gross domestic product, GDP, growth slowed down to 6.1% in 2019-20 due to COVID-19. Industry, mainly construction and services, accounted for most of the growth. Agriculture was not affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and its contribution to growth slightly improved in 2019-20 compared to the previous year. Private consumption and public investment explained demand-side growth, the latter assuming an increasingly important role. Ethiopian is Africa's largest airline in terms of passengers carried, destinations served, fleet size, and revenue. Ethiopian is also the world's fourth largest airline by the number of countries served. Ethiopian Airlines is certified as a 4-star airline for the quality of its airport and on-board product and staff service. Product rating includes seats, amenities, food and beverages, cleanliness, etc., and service rating is for both cabin staff and ground staff. Ethiopia is remarkably safe. Most of the time, serious or violent crime is rare, and against travelers it's extremely rare, and moreover outside the capital, Addis Ababa, the risk of petty crime drops still further. A simple tip for travelers: always look as if you know where you're going. Thieves and con artists get wind of an uncertain newcomer in a minute. It's very unlikely that you'll encounter any serious difficulties, and even less likely if you're prepared for them. Most of Ethiopia is fairly trouble-free, but there are a couple of areas where trouble does flare with worrying frequency. These include the Ogaden region, border regions, which can include the Danakil Depression, and parts of the south. It's generally a mixture of rebel activity and ethnic violence, though you're highly unlikely to get caught up in it. Do keep your ear to the ground for developments. In 2016, large-scale protests against the government, particularly in Oromia and Amhara regions of central Ethiopia, prompted many foreign governments to warn foreign travelers against all but essential travel to the country. Many demonstrators were killed in clashes with government forces, and while it seemed that tourists were never the target, some foreign-owned businesses were attacked and burnt to the ground. Without such unrest, the country is usually safe in which to travel. Always check your government's latest security reports on countries, such as those published by the British Foreign Office. Don't let these scare you away, as they do tend to err on the side of caution, though if they warn you not to venture to a specific area, then your travel insurance might be invalid. Try also to speak with people inside the country before making any decisions, whether or not the infamous Farangi frenzy, when shouts of you greeted you at every turn, is becoming rarer and rarer, at least in touristy parts of the country. Off the beaten track, you can still expect it to be a musical accompaniment to your travels. If it does start to get to you, then just ignoring it, or, even better, treating it with humor, is probably the best answer in how to deal with it. Anger only provokes children more. There can be few things more tempting than a grumpy Farangi. An Amharic hid, clear off, for a boy, hiji, for a girl or hidu, for a group is the Ethiopian response, and sends children scuttling. However, it can have the reverse effect and is considered rather harsh from a foreigner. Ethiopia has few scams and rip-offs. Those that do exist, like the notebook scam, where kids beg for notebooks and pens for school, which, if you buy them one, are taken straight back to the shop to exchange for money, are pretty transparent and rather easily avoided. In Addis in particular, reports have emerged recently of small boys selling chewing gum and the like surrounding unsuspecting visitors. In the confusion and press of bodies, pockets are often emptied. We've also heard isolated reports of a pedestrian spitting on a person's leg, pretending it was an accident, and then trying to help you to clean it up and clean out your pockets in the process. You'll also hear many hard luck stories or those soliciting sponsorship for travel or education in Ethiopia or abroad. Although most are not genuine, some stories are sadly true, so don't be rude. Also look out for fake antiques in shops. Pickpocketing is the biggest safety concern for travelers, but is a problem mainly in Addis Ababa and other large towns. Keep an eye on your belongings at bus stations and be wary of people offering to put your bags on the bus roof. Be aware that professional thieves sometimes operate at major festivals and markets, targeting Ethiopians as well as foreigners. High unemployment has spawned many self-appointed and unofficial guides. You will be approached, accompanied for a while, given unasked for information and then charged. Be wary of anyone who approaches you unasked, particularly at the exit of bus stations, etc. Unfortunately, there's almost always an ulterior motive. In some of the more remote areas, these include the southeast Sargadon Desert, near the Kenyan border, along the Awash Mill Road at night, and in the far west Shiftas, bandits are sometimes reported. Tourists are very rarely targeted, but it does happen. In early 2012, 5 foreign tourists were killed and 4 people kidnapped close to the Erdeal volcano in the Danakil Depression. The government blamed Eritrea for the attacks, but nobody has ever been brought to justice. Since that time, a large Ethiopian military presence has made the Danakil area safer than before, but it's still worth keeping your ear to the ground. Check government travel advice warnings to keep up to date with any recent trouble spots. Tour companies are also a good source of information, though remember that some less than reputable ones might tell you a place is safe when it isn't, just in order to get your custom and money.